So you grew up in cornfields.
Cornfield, USA.
Yeah. Illinois, Iowa.
Literally Illinois. You know, it's like you drive and it's like lots of corn, and then little town, and then more corn. Small town comes with boredom for a lot of kids, and so there's always lots of parties and things like that. And but start off at a younger age. My family drinks, and they still do. But at a younger age, it was kind of heavier. Lots of parties for the adults, and the kids would kind of be left to entertain, and you don't know how. Unsupervised. You don't know how long it's gonna last, that sort of thing. And we didn't kill each other. That was good. That was always good. Nobody got severely hurt. But we started going to church with a friend when I was 8 years old. I visited VBSs before that, so between like 5 and 8, I had like a VBS a summer, that we would go to, and that would kind of be my knowledge of God and memorizing scripture, what you do at VBS, things like that. Craft time was always so fun. I'd come home, and show all my stuff, and but we started going when a friend. We moved, and a friend down the road invited us to church, and so we went like as a family all together, and kind of new, but my parents liked it, so we kind of started going like frequently. If I say frequent, we were Easter and Christmas kind of Christians, but to me that was frequent. That was more than what we were going before, and then it became more. It became more times a year. I was allowed to go with my friends, and things like that, and so I realized that I felt like I was missing something in my life, and it was God. I just didn't know the extent of it until later on. But when I was 11, I asked God into my heart and got baptized because I knew what that meant. I knew I wanted to, spend eternity with Him that day that I left this earth, and I wanted to live for Him. And my parents, we started going to church a lot between like 9.5 and 11. And then it was shortly after I got baptized, my parents decided that they all of a sudden wanted to get a divorce. And my world was just kind of rocked. I had to start going between 2 different houses, and it was stressful because my parents were fighting. Because, it wasn't like a clean divorce, where they just decided, well, we just don't love each other, we're going to get a divorce, and we still love our kids. No, it was we hate each other, and our kids are just stuck in the middle kind of thing. And so it was a custody battle, between which parent drank the less and who could throw that in the face of the judge, who would get custody of us. And it's a back and forth battle, and boyfriends and girlfriends were introduced, into their lives and introduced to our lives, and it was a very stressful time between 11 and 13, which should be prime time in like a girl's, age of, this maturing into a younger woman, and her mom's being there, to kind of like guide her through that. But I was being, I was like a puppet going back and forth between like mom and dad's house, and then dad ended up getting custody because mom overdosed one night. And so then I had to live with like what I felt like was a stranger to me because my dad was a truck driver. He just wasn't home a lot. And so I didn't know my dad very well other than him being home, sleeping, or drinking. And all of a sudden I was forced to live with him. And I was 12 years old, and that really bothered me. I became very reclusive, and only certain friends kind of knew something was wrong because I wasn't real outgoing to begin with. I kind of had my close circle, of friends as little girls kind of do. I remember being very angry at both of my parents, and so it was my mom's weekend one weekend, and so I just kind of, just had it, and I remember yelling at her on the phone and being mad at both of them for putting me in the middle of all their drama. That was the last conversation that I had with her, so. I told her that I didn't love her. That's the last thing that she heard. She had been doing she was going to court mandated AA treatments and was doing really well and really trying to get her life right, but she didn't tell me, so all the hiding and everything didn't come out until like 5 years ago, really. But I remember not being able to go to sleep that night. I just knew something was wrong. It happened a lot when I was a kid. I used to worry about my parents whenever they were out because I always felt like something was going to happen to them. And I remember laying there, I hadn't slept, and my dad got a phone call, and I knew it was my mom. So I just laid there because I could hear him and waiting for him to come and get me. And when he did, I knew it was my mom. She had gotten in a wreck, but she went out drinking, and she hadn't drank for like months. And so, you know, when you don't drink for a while, and your body's starting to go through, you know, all of that, it's cleaning out your system. I mean, any amount of alcohol can make you, you know, back to not being able to.
No tolerance.
Yeah, there's no tolerance, you know. And I struggled because, you know, I found God, and He was the missing part of my life. And then my life just kind of like torn up in shambles. You know, parents split up, and it was awful. And then my mom died, and then I was just forced to be, you know, with my dad, this stranger that I was already, you know, had to live with for the last year. And I was forced to be, you know, a mom to my 7-year-old sister. And so that was a lot for a 13-year-old. I was finishing my 8th grade year when it happened. And so my friends who are like my brothers and sisters were great as far as like when I went to church and we were in youth group, they were uplifting, and I had that positive, you know, like on Wednesdays when I would go and on Fridays when I would go for youth, like they were like my strength. And then on Sundays, you know, we would go and it was, everyone give you that look, you know, like that look that they give you whenever you've lost, you know, a parent, like as a kid. And so it's like people don't know how to treat you. It's like you just become this weird kid without a mom. And, you know, people tried, and they really did. And my pastor's wife was really good and sweet and would invite us over, you know, to Sunday lunches and things like that. And so I felt like on the outside I was getting better, but then on the inside I was dying, you know, like that mask that you put on, that you wear to school, you know, that you wear to church, that you wear around people. And, you know, because I just wanted to be happy. Like I was just numb on the inside. Midway through freshman year, I remember trying to slip my wrist. Sitting up in my room, I didn't know what to do. And I just heard God say, stop. And so I did. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to stop, then you need to fix me. Like I just felt so broken. But I didn't know how to ask God to fix me. You know, I didn't have anybody like guiding me through the grief of losing a parent. I didn't really have anybody walking with me on how to like deal with those emotions. You know, as much as, you know, the youth pastors that kind of came and left, you know, during that time period tried, you know, and, you know, my pastor and his wife tried on their level too. There wasn't anybody even in my immediate family that, you know, could see that something was going on. I mean, my dad didn't even see it. Then, when I was 16, I had a friend introduce me to drugs. And that was all it took for me. I was just wanting something to make me feel better. And I've seen movies where people did it and they felt better and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so I tried drugs and I was hooked because it made me feel numb and it got rid of all the pain. And so I thought that was my fix. But that became my crutch. It became my dependency to where, I mean, it was all day, every day, you know, during school. Then after the drugs, of course, you know, came alcohol, because sometimes that just goes hand in hand in some circles. And so alcohol came, you know, before I graduated. And once I graduated, I tried to do junior college and decided that I was going to take a job in Florida. And I just needed to get away, you know, just get away from the responsibility of my family and everything that was there. And so I went to Florida, and that wasn't any better. It's kind of like trying to run away from your problems, but your problems still follow you, you know? The depression's still there, you know, the emptiness inside was still there. And you know, I knew God was there the whole time I did. I went to church the entire time I was in high school. You know, I was just going through the motions. I was in church, you know, and have fun and go on youth trips, and I'm dying inside was how I felt. When I got to Florida, it escalated, the drinking did, and I found myself in with some really bad people and started dealing drugs. Got arrested with enough to have a felony charge stick with some extreme sentencing. but the guy let me walk away.
Wow.
And I remember walking away just like laughing at the guy thinking, you idiot, you just let me walk away. I admitted to dealing, I admitted to, to having, you found all that in the vehicle, and you just let me walk away. And it took me a while to realize that was God, saying, I have more for you.
Right.
You will just trust me. I have more for you.
Yes.
There's more to your life than this. And it was about a couple months after that I was like, it just hit me. I just woke up one day going, I gotta go home. And I don't know why, because I was like, what's at home for me? What's there? And so I ended up coming home and decided that I couldn't move back home. I just, wanted to live on my own, and that was probably stupid because, I just decided I could just do whatever I wanted to do. So, the drugs still continued, drinking still continued, and then I found myself in a really bad relationship. Lost my license. Okay, well, I overdosed a few times and alcohol poisoning a few times. Should have been dead a lot. It still didn't wake me up. And this whole time, it was just God just kept being like, I'm here. I'm waiting for you. And I didn't want to go to God because I knew I'd have to give up my flesh, and that flesh was what was making me feel better. And I didn't know, I didn't think that I had the strength to just let go of all of that, and God's amazing because people say God doesn't speak to you in audible voices, but He has always me, and it's been that confirmation in my spirit that I didn't even know I had to begin with, the Holy Spirit in me, because I wasn't living for God at all. But I remember waking up one day and God saying He needs to go, because He was living with me, everything, and so we ended the relationship, and had my place back to myself, and I remember just feeling empty again, and my sister was in high school, and she was like, hey, we got these new youth pastors, you need to come to church with me. And I was like, okay, but I love my sister, so I did, and that was when she started going over to the Assembly of God church. Our church prior, the pastor had retired, and so my dad quit going years ago, and but my sister always went with her friends, and so she switched churches, and I thought, okay, I know people there. I graduated with some people there. I'll give it a shot, kind of thing. But I remember that was the church that my grandma went to when I was younger, and speaking in tongues used to scare me. So I thought, what am I getting into? Because I remember grandma used to come here, and I didn't know what was going on. I was still going out, on Fridays and Saturdays, even throughout the week, drinking and everything else. And I would go to church incredibly hungover, and you could smell the alcohol on me, and the pastor and the youth pastor would walk up to me as if they couldn't smell anything on me and just show me love, just talk to me like a normal human being, and didn't give me that look like, ooh, you just blew a bunch of alcohol in my face, and I appreciated that, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to try, and so I did that for a few weeks, and then I was kind of like, okay, I'm starting to feel guilty, going out to drink. I was like, this is a new feeling, because I didn't have that before. I could care less, But I was like, the more I got to know these people, the more I felt like I shouldn't go to church hungover, because that's wrong. And it was more for the people than it was for God. I'm like, God's been seeing me the whole time, so He knows exactly what's going on. But it was the people that I wanted to get to know, that I wanted to see where they've been, and who they are, and that sort of thing. And I remember the youth pastor and his wife. They knew. We talked about it. They knew where I come from, and I admitted a lot of things to them. They were just like, we want you to start coming on Wednesday nights. And I was like, to youth? I'm in my 20s, And they were like, no, I want you to start coming, and you can work in the sound booth. And I was like, okay. So I was like, whatever, if you're going to let me switch buttons and run the computer, I can do that, because I don't have anything else to do. I had no other life, and I thought, why not? And so I started going, and it was like not even 2 months doing that God was like, this is where you need to be. You know, like not with the people who are trying to call you to get you to go out on the weekends, but this is where you need to be. And I remember even through that like 2-month process, like I slowly stopped going to, out with friends, and kind of started back into being reclusive into myself. But I wasn't really in myself. I found that I was picking my Bible back up, and I was praying more and talking to God, and I was just like, okay, I was like, I can do this. And so went to bed one night, and I was just like, okay, God, you brought these people into my life, like, what next? And God goes, you got to move back home. And I said, I have to do what? He's like, you have to move back home. And I was like, I'm 22 years old. You want me to move back home? Into what bedroom? Like, I was like, my dad had remarried. I had a stepsister and a little brother at that point. I was like, they all have their own bedroom. Like, where am I supposed to sleep? And he's like, asked to share a room with your sister. I'm like, my sister goes in high school? I was like, oh, Jesus, you're like, testing my patience here, right? And she's 6 years younger than me, and so, but I did. I obeyed. And I got up that morning, and it took all, like, you have to let down that pride, and like, I remember standing at my dad's door, and like, you never knock at your house, you just walk in. I just remember like being on the porch, just like, oh, I gotta knock on this door. He's gonna answer, and I gotta be like, I want to move back home. And I was like talking myself into it, like it was like I had to work myself up to. I'm like, God, I know you said to do it, but do you know my dad? Like, I mean, like this is gonna be a gloat kind of moment. Is how I felt, And I was like, my dad's gonna rub it in my face and like all this kind of stuff, because it's just he didn't think that I could live on my own, all that kind of stuff. And I just remember knocking on the door, and he opened the door, and he just stared at me, and I just started crying. He's like, all right, what are you doing here? And I was like, I need to move back home. And he's like, you need to or you want to? I was like, both. And he's like, okay. I was just like, okay, okay. And I was like today? So he's like, yeah, whenever. He's like, go back up your stuff. And I was like, okay. He's like, you're moving in with Ashley. I was like, oh, I figured. So that's what I needed, because I realized that I had pushed myself away from my family, but I needed them, I just needed the love that a family can bring, even though we might have been a little dysfunctional, we were still a family, and we love each other. That was right before Thanksgiving, 2006, because we met in 2007, yeah, 2006. Between then and New Year's, my life just drastically changed. I completely quit using drugs and drinking, and I had no taste for it. Like, I thought it was the weirdest thing, because I had no withdrawals. I had nothing. Like, I thought, okay, well, I was thinking I'm going to have to, go to rehab to get off the drugs, is what I was thinking, because it became such a dependency. I was like, oh, the alcohol, I've already kind of phased it out. In my mind, you're just kind of processing what you're going to have to do to, get sober, to get well. But it was like, once I had made that step to move back home, God just took it all away. And I, disconnected with people that were my friends, during that time of my life. I just kind of quit talking to them, and I eventually had to tell them that I'm not drinking anymore, or I'm not going out, or, not going to get high or whatever, and I'm going to church. And, a lot of people would laugh at me, because they're just like, well, okay, why are you going to church? And they didn't understand it, and I said, because I need it, I need to. And so, I was going, on Sundays, and I was going on Wednesdays for the youth and helping out and everything. And then the youth pastor and his wife and some of the young adults would get together, and they'd invite me, for, just to hang out. And I'm like, these people could care less what I've been through, and they're just, they're loving on me. Like, they're just treating me like a normal human being, because, I always feared that, like, people were going to look at me and think, oh my gosh, this crazy girl from, all this background was going to come to this church. And, they didn't treat me any differently. They loved on me, and they were genuine, and I appreciated that, because I had seen some hypocritical Christians in my life growing up, and I was glad to see genuine and see people who loved God and sought after God and and stuff. And I just remember, like, I didn't come from a background that was really expressive, you know, or we didn't even really rededicate. It wasn't kind of a thing. So it's kind of like when you were saved, and God knows your heart and you're okay, you know. And so I didn't really grasp the concept of asking God to forgive me for, like, current sin, you know, like it was kind of foreign to me. But I remember this worship songs were playing, and I just felt like I needed to just apologize to God, you know. I just had that overwhelming feeling, and so I knelt where I was at, tears in my eyes, and I apologized to God because I realized I was angry at Him. Is what it was boiled down to. I was angry. I was angry because I felt like God took my mom from me, and I was angry because, you know, I felt like He was the reason why I was hurting so bad, you know. And I pushed Him away, even though I would go to church and I'd listen and I'd hear all the Bible stories. God was like here in the back burner, you know, of my life, and I was really angry, and I let all that emotion, all that hurt just out, and I, you know, gave my heart back to God, and I said, okay, God, and I said, from this point forward, whatever you want me to do, wherever you have me to go, let me know. Like, I'm here and I'm yours, and I want you to use me. I've spent 7 years at junior college not knowing what in the world I wanted to do. I had so much interest in like 6 different things. You know, I started doing different degrees and different things like that, and I finished with a, you know, associate degree. It took me 7 years, you know, off and on. I had like 90 credits, and you only need, you know, 60 to graduate. But I remember
that's dedication.
I know, dedication, that's right. I'm like, I have a lot of interest, but I remember leaving that service and God just going, just trust me. And I'm like, that's really scary, but okay, you know, like, I mean, I trust you, God. And we go back home, and it wasn't within like a week or two, and the pastor was like, it wasn't even 2 weeks, because the pastor's son was from CBC, and he was a year younger than me at school, so we kind of knew each other. He's like, hey, he's like, Randall's home for college. He's like, maybe think about it. What are you going to do when you graduate? Like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. Haven't even thought that far. I graduate in May, and I don't even have really a degree in anything. So right now I'm just working, you know. I was working at a law firm at that time, and he was like, I want to give you some literature on the Assemblies of God schools. And I was like, oh, the Assemblies of God has schools? And he's like, yeah. And you know, he told me all the schools in different areas, and I was like, well, I just came back from Florida, that's a no. You know, and I was like, I don't want to move up to Massachusetts, it's too far away. You know, same thing for up in Michigan. And I was like, okay, there's 2 in Missouri. And so I said, that's close enough for me to be where family is, you know, because I felt like we had a lot of reconnecting to do. And 4 hours away, I was like, that's doable. So there was Evangel and CPC, and I was like, okay. And so I applied to both schools and was scheduled to go visit both schools in February after they had kind of, you know, got back to their normal. And I remember saying, okay, God, you know, both these schools are great. One's a Bible school and one's just, you know, a Christian university. Like, clearly those are 2 different, you know, types of schools, but I don't even know which one I'm going to do. So I was like, I'm just going to trust that I will know, you know, when I step onto the campus of whichever school I'm supposed to go to. And I had scheduled the same day to have two visits. You know, one was in the morning for CBC and the afternoon for Evangel. And I walked onto CBC campus, and God just said, this is it. And I was like, okay, this is it. So I remember sitting in the classroom, and later on we realized it was a classroom that he was sitting in. And so I remember sitting there and thinking that, you know, I want to know more of this. You know, like, I want to know more of what he's saying. This is about the Bible. Like, I want to know more about God. I want to know more about, you know, everything. And so I'm like, this is why you want me to come here, God. You know, like, I get it, you know. And I, you know, looking into their degree programs, I was like, okay, I don't want to, you know, I don't think I want to be a pastor or anything like that. Because this is the point that I was at, right? I'm just newly saved. Like, who wants me to be a pastor? And so I was like, I originally started out my degree in college and junior college for psychology. I was like, counseling is, a different side of that Christian counseling. I'm like, that's great. I'll get my degree in Christian counseling. I didn't realize that it was a lot for myself as well. Through that I had a lot of healing. I had a lot of trauma that I dealt with, a lot of things that were for me, but also for God to prepare me for future to be able to, help people as well. After visiting in February, that May, I met Christopher. And, my husband, the lovely Southern man that he is.
I thought you were going to say when you walked on the CBC, God said, there he is.
No.
We didn't meet him at college.
We didn't meet him. Yeah, I didn't even remember him being in the class until later
really?
on, whenever we had talked. We met at my home church whenever Heartsong came to visit. There was 23 of you guys on the team, 22, 23. Yeah.
That was the group that came a couple years ago to church.
So there's men and women of God, that they love to sing worship or they play worship songs together, and I was super excited to meet all these people I was going to get to go to school with, and then I got to meet Christopher, and it's funny how you tell God things, but God's like, well, I got a different plan for you, I remember going into knowing that I was going to college, and I was like, I'm not going to date anybody for a year. I don't even want to think about relationships. God, I just want to focus on you. You are my priority kind of thing. And I was like, nope, sorry. So met Christopher, and we just kind of started talking because I used to walk and I felt like God say, if you want him to even be your friend, someone who's spiritually mature, to even say, hey, are you reading your Bible today, or whatever, then you need to be honest with him. And I thought, oh, okay, what do you mean by honest with him? And he said, tell him everything. And I thought, okay. I spent 6 hours on the phone, and we had only spoken 3 times before that, through text messaging and instant messaging. So this is our first phone conversation, instant messaging. It tells you how long ago it was.
You didn't think this girl was just
It was actually like MSN or something.
Yeah. But it was and our conversations were very brief, and and I thought, okay, he's gonna think I'm nuts, and so I sent my 10 cents a text to text him that I was wanting to talk on the phone and if he was available, and I was so nervous, but I remember telling them, okay, God told me if we're gonna be friends, I need to tell you about my life. And he was just like, okay, He's like, this is random. But I did. I remember I was on a walk that night, and I walked for 3 hours instead of an hour, and I was like, okay, my battery's going dead, I'm heading to the house. I plugged it in, and I just sat for another 3 more hours, and I just told him everything, and he just quietly listened on the end. And I thought, he's gonna judge me, so bad whenever I get off the phone.
Yeah.
And
because if it was me, I'd be like, this girl's crazy.
I know, right?
I'm just
That's
thinking,
exactly it. I'm thinking, this girl is
because I wasn't walking with the Lord in college, so
Hour 2.
Put it on hold.
I'm actually hearing somebody for the first time. Totally
But I remember whenever I was done, I was like, okay, I think I'm finished, and he's like, okay, and I was like, you're gonna judge me really hard, aren't you? And he's like, no. And he's like, thank you for telling me. And I was like, okay. That was a weight off my shoulders, and I thought, now I can have an honest, even just a friendship, with somebody. And then I felt like if I could say it to one person, then I could say it to more people, And I wouldn't be afraid to be this is where I've been, this is where I want to be better, and I want to be more. Our relationship progressed faster than I think either one of us thought, him being previously engaged and me being in a previous relationship that, wasn't good. And here we were, and barely knowing each other, and we're falling in love. And so we were married within a week of knowing each other for a year.
But he did get your entire testimony in the first 6 hours.
He did get my entire testimony.
Just kidding.
What else was there to learn? What else was there to know?
I felt so unqualified to even date him, let alone be engaged to him prior to going to CBC. So there was some animosity between some people, you know, that just chose to kind of write me off even as a friend, you know, and I thought, is this what this life is going to be like? Because I don't want it, you know, like I don't want to have people like judge me before knowing me, you know, and I'm like, if this is a line I have to walk in ministry, you're going to have to help me, because, you know, like it's a tough place to be, knowing that the person that you love and engaged to is going to want to be a pastor someday, you know, like that's his calling. And I thought, oh Lord, help me, because I'm not worthy of the title of pastor's wife, you know. And I thought of pastor's wife that I knew growing up, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm nowhere near her, you know. I don't play the piano, like first couple, you know, positions for us was learning for me, you know, because I realized that like people just don't jump in and be like, okay, well, where's your past? Where have you been through? You know what I mean? And like, tell me everything. They just don't do that. You know, people just love you for who you are, you know. But it honestly took me until coming to El Dorado to fully realize that. I struggled a little bit, you know, with our first actual pastorate position, you know, not just youth pastors, but like senior pastors, you know, because like all these women of faith who've known God a lot longer, you know, than I have, and like what could I even like give, you know, like to them, like in a relationship, and I just felt very like just insecure in all of it, to the point that I just thought I just want to walk away, you know. But God didn't have us walk away. He changed our direction for ministry, you know. We ended up in college ministry, and so and kind of almost evangelist per se for the school. So I got to travel a lot and meet a lot of new people. And it was through that and meeting all these different people all this different time that I realized I missed the connection that you do have with people whenever you're in the church body. You know, the relationship that you build with people, that foundation that you can have, you know, that you can share life together. And so I thought, okay, that is an aspect of being pastors that I love, you know, that I want to do, you know. I want to be able to have life with people, to do life with people. And I can't be afraid of where I've been, you know, and I can't be afraid that, you know, I'm from Illinois, so I talk faster, you know, and I have other mannerisms that are different than, you know, in the South. And so I just have to, you know, just roll with it and not think that people are, you know, judging me, you know. And so whenever we made the move here, I just remember saying, I'm just not going to worry about anything. You know, I'm just going to be me. People are either going to like me for me or they're not. You know, like there's no more facade that I'm trying to put up. There's no more persona of this is me as the pastor's wife, or I'm going to live up to your expectations. You know, like this is how God made me. You know, this is how God wired me to be. And so I've found that, you know, I've shared more of my testimony with people, even in personal conversation, and I've not been afraid to share some things. It hurts, and it always does whenever you talk about certain, you know, specific things. But in all of that, I realized that, you know, God was calling me the entire time. God never left me, no matter how angry I was at him. You know, no matter how much I wanted to push him away, he was always there. And I thought, you know, we can't even... people in our lives, we can't even expect to do that sometimes, you know, because we're humans, and we're just like, well, I'm done with you, you pushed me away so much kind of thing. But, you know, God will never leave us. And so that's something that I have truly learned through all of it, because I look back going, I should be dead. I should have been in jail for a long time. You know, like, I should have been in jail to the point that I would have never met him. You know what I mean? I would have never gotten saved when I got saved, and went off to Bible school when I went to Bible school. I mean, but like, the fact that God kept calling on me, you know, and that God just kept being that voice inside of my head. And like, if I didn't have the faith to just step out a little bit, it wouldn't happen, you know. As a younger person, I kept thinking, God's just gonna do it, you know, but it's not like that. God waits us for, like, you know, Pastor said Sunday, to take that step of faith, you know, that obedient step. And so, you know, when God saved me, I feel like my entire life just turned, you know, I mean, completely around. I mean, you're filled with the Holy Spirit. You know, I met Christopher, and we've been married now 12 years, you know, and we have 2 beautiful girls that I wasn't supposed to have, you know, and so I'm very blessed, and I think now that, you know, it's hard to rationalize why a parent leaves the earth before you feel like it's time, but I feel like God knew that needed to happen, because my life would have ended up completely different. I would have ended up in that same pattern of both my parents' lives, and I would have ended up, never even stepping foot at CBC, or never even stepping foot in First Assembly to even meet him or anything like that. My life would not be the same, I can see that because I love my mom, and I wanted to be her, and so that would have meant following her anywhere. And so I understand it now, it's been 21 years that she's been gone. So I've lived longer in my life, without her than I had with her. And I have moments, we all do, where we wish that she was here, if someone was here with us. But it's no longer like the sadness, because God reminds me of the joy that I have, I had a wonderful mother in love, as she called it, instead of law, through Christopher's mom. And, she was amazing, while she was in my life before, she went to be with the Lord. And I thought, I was so blessed that I had the opportunity to have a mother again, and I'm blessed to have a spiritual husband, who loves God and, is the leader of our home, and, that loves our girls in a way that, that I didn't necessarily get to be loved, and I just look at my life and just think that, I don't deserve it, but God says, yes, you do, and here it is, and I have more for you. And so I'm just, sometimes I have to wake up and just be like, this is reality, like, thank you, God, like, this is my life, like, these are the people that I love, and, I see my family, like, asking to have prayer and, different things that I haven't seen them. They stepped foot into church, whenever our girls were dedicated. And one day, just one day, just praying for, my family. Because if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody, It doesn't matter where we've been or what we've done. God doesn't keep a record like we do, And there are parts of my life that God has just completely erased. And people are like, how's that possible? And I said, because I asked for it. I asked for God to wipe away some of the memories that I struggled with, because the details and the things that had happened and the trauma was just too much. And the Lord has wiped away to the point that I have to actually sit and think about it sometimes. The emotion is still there, but I think, God, you're so awesome. If you can take away the memory, for myself even, then, I mean, you can do anything. God can literally do anything if we just let him.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.